So our efforts in Taiwan began 3 years ago to work with both civil society and government as part of a whole of society approach to make Taiwan more resilient to potential man-made and natural disasters. Our focus to date has been to mobilize Taiwanese society to be prepared for any disaster. The work involves recruiting and training over 20,000 Taiwanese civilians and first responders, and working with 100 civil society organizations in disaster preparedness, drone piloting, medical training, and crisis communication. And I think it's important to note that this is all while working together with the Taiwanese government.
Disasters, regardless of the cause, it may be man-made, it may be natural, the impacts are usually often the same. And so we're dealing with interrupted services. We're dealing with critical infrastructure that's affected. Most importantly, as you mentioned, Jim, we're dealing with people whose lives are turned upside down. And so the training we provide covers everything that help communities respond to that type of scenario. It's basic medical skills, it's search and rescue, it's survival, it's communication, it's understanding, it's learning how to stand up a shelter and manage it safely. It's all of that that make communities more resilient. And I think with every typhoon, we're reminded of how important it is. You know, in Taiwan, we have approximately 16,000 firefighters and paramedics. They're very professional, they're very capable, and they're very dedicated. The problem is, and the challenge is, there isn't enough of them in a country of 24 million citizens. 16,000 is not even 1 in 1,000, right? So just think about that service ratio: one first responder to 1,500 civilians, right? I think that ratio, that number, tells you how important it is for every individual, every citizen, to pick up the skills, to know how to keep themselves safe, to know how to protect their families, and to know to help their communities. We believe that resilience, it's a word that we hear often, more and more often these days, but the resilience has to be local. Resilience starts with every individual knowing the basics, having a sense of awareness of their surroundings, and knowing how to take action safely. And from there, we have families that are more secure, and from there we have neighbors who can help each other. You know, it's impossible to separate resilience from what happens at the individual and the local level, and that's the work we're trying to do. Some of the threats we can do our best to mitigate. Some we can't. For example, we can't control when the next typhoon hits, but we can work on risk reduction. We can work on mitigation. We can work on reducing the vulnerabilities that we face. Now, on the other threats, some of the other threats, there's more that we can do, and that an active intervention, active preparedness can maybe help us offset the crisis. And here we're talking about conflict, right? Man-made conflict. You know, we don't need to rehash the threat that's posed by the CCP and the PLA on Taiwan. I think everyone on this call is tracking that. But I think what is often missed in discussions about Taiwan's defenses and Taiwan's resilience and Taiwan's ability to deter conflict is the preparedness of the entire nation, is the preparedness of civilians at the individual, or I should say, starting at the individual level. But really, ultimately, I think people need to understand that Taiwan, as a democracy, just like you, we are working through on a daily basis challenges and hurdles. We have our internal friction. We have areas where we fall short. But what's important is, because we're a democracy, we're able to look at our shortcomings. We're able to look at where we need to do better, and we're able to harness civil society, leverage civil society, and be a better country. You know, I think Taiwan Taiwan is on the other side of the world from the U.S. I think we're almost exactly 12 hours off from where you're sitting now, Jim. But in many ways, we're fighting the same fights. We're fighting the same fights democratically. We're fighting the same fight internationally. I can't think of another country where our fates are so intertwined, and I think it would be foolish to not care about each other both ways.